All right, we're back with another review. This time for Marvel's Miss Marvel on disneytheplus.com//Miss Marvel /series. Um, yeah, that's what we're here to do. So
If you've ever wondered why I do most of the intros, here's why. Welcome back,
if you're
everyone.
still here after that interview, after that intro, that's what we're gonna do. So
Yep, we're going to talk about Miss Marvel and say what our thoughts are on the TV show. The series finale had just come out, so we want to make sure to talk about it and give you guys our opinion.
we're not
on
gonna
the TV
be
show.
3 weeks late this time because somebody actually
Right.
watched it.
I watched it. I know. I
Yeah.
binged it. Literally, I binged the entire season in one night. So we're going to talk about our opinions. Justin, tell me, what were your thoughts on Miss Marvel?
Well, when it was first announced and they first talked about the powers being different, I was skeptical as hell. Because for those of you who don't know, I like Miss Marvel a lot. I did a Comics for Casuals video on her, like, I don't know, 2 years ago at this point. And she's probably one of my favorite Marvel characters. So I wanted them to not mess this up. And I am glad to report that I don't really think they did. I think they kind of nailed it. What about you, Maximilian?
No, I thought it was really good. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of Captain Marvel, just in general. I like Miss Marvel. I don't like Captain Marvel, not because of the comic book character, because of Brie Larson. Sorry, just an opinion. For all the people that love Brie Larson out there, I'm just not one of them. I didn't love the Captain Marvel movies, so I was actually a little nervous more about that on that end. But overall, no, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I personally have the opinion, and we'll talk more about this a little bit, but I just thought it was a little too drawn out. I think, again, this could have been something that could have been a movie, and cut down and made to be where it just slammed the point at home a little bit more. But we'll talk about why here in a little bit.
We'll talk about why you're wrong here in a sec.
We'll talk about why I'm right here in a little bit, but we disagree on this point, but that's okay. That's the point. These TV shows and these movies, they all have all these different opinions on it, and that's why it's kind of fun for us to talk about it and see what the differing opinions are. But so you thought it was perfect?
I wouldn't say perfect, but I really liked it. I think they, straight out the gate, the casting of Kamala, I don't have her name in front of me, and I'm not going to Google it, but she's
fantastic,
so good. Like, she's on. It's gonna. I think it's gonna end up being one of those castings that they just nail, and then like it's gonna influence the character going forward in the comic books. Like, it's one of those perfect castings. They couldn't have nailed it better. Like a Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Evans. One of those that's like, oh my God, you literally found the perfect person for this role at the perfect time. This is that, in my opinion. I think she's fantastic. Like, even in real life, she's a big fan of the MCU and Marvel in general. There's even like this funny little thing exchange between her and Kevin Feige, where she basically texted him and told him that the MCU can't be the 616 universe. And she's right, because that's what they say it is, the multiverse of madness. She's 100% right. But that's the kind of person they got for this role, and I think that's perfect, because that's a lot of what Kamala is in the comics. She's a fangirl. She writes fan fiction. She does cosplay. And they got someone who does that stuff in real life and also is a great actress within the show.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I couldn't agree more. I thought she was fantastic. And honestly, I think the character castings for each person in this was fantastic.
It doesn't
the
stop
acting
with her.
overall was incredible. It really was.
It's one of the most, I think, well cast Disney Plus things so far. And like, as someone who really likes the characters and the world of the Miss Marvel comics, they nailed every single one of the characters. Like, it's kind of amazing. Not one of them is like off in any kind of way. Her family is cast great. Her friends are cast great. The villains are kind of whatever, but that's just a problem with Marvel stuff in general, honestly.
Yep. And that's honestly, that's just to jump right in. That's my biggest issue with Miss Marvel is the villains. And obviously you have the Jinn, and then you also have essentially the police, the what is it?
Damage
Their
control.
exact name.
It's damage
It's
control.
like not damage control. Yeah, it was the damage control essentially unit. Which it's so funny that it felt like the damage control unit was more powerful, like, and more of a threat to our heroes than Jin were. But that's what it felt like, and it was crazy that they just weren't very good. Like, it wasn't a very good villain by any means, and the Jin, like, overall, like, they weren't very good villains, and their character development was very poor. And that is honestly, when I say that I personally would have rather it just been a movie, is honestly because they tried to develop these characters of the Jin, and I thought they did such a bad job of it. I wish they would just cut all that out and just say, yep, they're the Jin. They're coming here. They're going to try to steal that, steal the bracelet so that they can get to their world and take out, almost 90% of their backstory, because it was just so bad and made zero sense. Like, they were even fighting amongst each other in the show. It just, overall, I just thought they were really bad. And then the damage control unit, they had like zero background really of why they were there and what they were really doing. Yeah, they were trying to capture these superheroes, but instead of just sending someone in to get these kids and say, hey guys, like, we just want to talk a little bit. It seems like you guys just found some superpowers. We want to help you, blah, blah, blah. They come in guns a-blazing with drones. Like it just makes zero sense in my opinion. And that was the one big flaw with the show. I loved the acting. I loved the characters. I thought it was fantastic. I loved learning, honestly, a lot about another culture and seeing those different things. But man, was it so that the villains in this show were so bad, and I didn't care about the villains at all, which, like you said, Marvel tends to do. It made it where it didn't make the show amazing for me when it really could have been. And sorry, I'm rambling here, but that's kind of my big problem, I think, with Ms. Marvel.
I do have a problem with those things, but I don't think as much as you do. I don't think like you need to take out the full backstory for the Jin / the clandestine, because like it does matter to the character of Miss Marvel. My biggest thing with them was that they pretended to be nice for like half an episode and then immediately like I don't think that whole twist was really, it's not even really a twist, it's just a thing that happened and like nobody was surprised by it. I think like they could have just come in guns a-blazing like, oh yeah, we suck and we're just going to be open about how we suck. So like that was my honestly biggest problem with them. I don't think they really needed to be developed, because like they're not what matters, especially not in like a thing. One of the things I think this show excelled in was the relationship and the dynamics between Kamala and her family. It's so well done. It's like ripped straight from the pages of the comic book. And I think that was the main focus of the story, more so than the villains. The villains were there as literally a plot point, which they could have been melded in a little bit better, but that's what they're there for anyway. So like, who really? I didn't mind. I didn't really care.
Sure.
And like,
I just think take away damage control, like take away the damage control aspect of it, make it where or take away one of them. But I don't think you can take away the Jin, because, like you said, it's the character development for Miss Marvel. So take away the damage control and those two crazy cops that make zero sense throughout the entire show. Make it where the Jin make more sense, because, like you said, like nobody was tricked by that, the switching. And also what's sad is like Miss Marvel, literally Kamala's character was like, oh yeah, like let me just go talk to him, and like they could have easily been like, oh yeah, let's just go talk, and then had a conversation and then started a fight right there. But then it just didn't make sense. Like, oh, they have to crash the wedding right this second. I'm done waiting. But I just waited for how many years to get to this moment? Because
they only waited because they didn't know where the bracelet was.
Like it just.
But like they hadn't been waiting that whole time. They didn't have any options. They didn't know where the bracelet was. They did know where the bracelet was at that point. So yeah, I don't blame them for being impatient at that point.
No, sure, I get it. Again, I think she wanted to talk to him. It just didn't make sense, and their characters just overall were not my favorite at all. And it just made it feel like, again, you need a good villain when the hero is fighting him, so then it makes you feel like, oh, like more, I don't know, you're more invested into the development of the superhero aspect, right? I think Miss Marvel, specifically the superhero side of it, I thought her character development in the family, like, I think you nailed it on the head. It was fantastic. It was so good. But it's just the overall, like, superhero aspect of it was just kind of meh, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the damage control were just kind of like government baddies that you'd see in like an 80s movie. You know what I mean? Like they're just out.
Sure.
They're just there to be jerks and probably a little racist or whatever. And like, I don't know. I think it was kind of cool. I like that whole episode and like the dynamic of the damage control lady just kind of like, I'm gonna get them no matter what, like whatever it costs. And then like she gets fired and all that. And like, I think it was cool to see Kamala have to protect her friends and her family from them and like make a stand against that and be like, okay. And I also, this is semi-related, I love the aspect of New Jersey City or whatever the hell it's called, coming and standing by her side. I think that was another really important thing. Like she's their hero, and that's a big thing in the comics too. She's like, I'm the brown girl from Jersey. These are my people, and that's who I'm gonna protect. And that's what that moment really helped serve. And it kind of, I can't spoil that. You haven't actually played that game. Never mind. It reminded me of something in Spider-Man Miles Morales, which you haven't played yet. So never mind. But I think that was an important moment for the character. And like the damage control, they're just there to be jerks. That's what they did in No Way Home too. They were just like, hey, we're just here to be jerks. You know what I mean?
Sure, but like, what's the motive? Like, what is their motivation in this show? Like, what is their motivation to bring superheroes in for what? You know, what's the motivation, and what's her specific motivation for not listening to orders and going in without permission? Like, you don't, like, I don't understand what.
Because she put so much into it that like if she pulls out now, then she's failed, or like what. I don't really disagree with you that they're not really developed, but also I don't care that it's not developed because whatever, you know.
Sure. Yeah, I think if they would have just chosen one kind of main bad, essentially, it could have been more effective versus having these two really, honestly, poor villains. But again, overall, like, talking about the pros, I thought character development was fantastic. I thought, again, Kamala did, like, the actress did such a good job, and it was, again, it made you want to root for her. It made you want to root for all the friends. Like, it was just fantastic. I loved the little jokes, like calling Bruno Brian throughout the many episodes, and like,
I like that he legitimately thought that was his name.
Really fun. What did you say? Sorry.
He legitimately thought that was his name too. Which I thought was funny.
So funny. No, but I did really think like the show overall was really good. And again, I think the big part of it that they nailed was is getting a totally different culture right in there, and actually being able to take a little bit of glimpse of that. Obviously, it's not a ton by any means, but it's still able to see like a different culture's perspective, and also just see their livelihood, and be able to see a hero come from that, that type of family, and I thought that was really great.
Yeah, I think the whole going to Pakistan thing was really cool. They actually introduced a character from the comics, Red Dagger, Kareem. God, I'm hoping I'm saying that right. In that whole part, and he's like, I think don't quote me on this, I might be wrong, but I think he's like the first like Marvel fully Pakistani superhero, because he's in the comics and he does his own thing. So that was cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
So let's talk about, what did you think about the powers? Because obviously they're different than in the comics. They're energy based, like constructs or whatever, compared to like she makes her fists really big. What did you think of the change?
I mean, honestly, I think they did actually a really good job with it. I think you're gonna have probably a stronger opinion one way or the other on this than I do, because I really don't do a lot of the comic stuff. But I know from like playing the game Avengers, that who Miss Marvel, what her powers are supposed to look like. But overall, I thought it was actually really good. I thought they did a really good job about it, and it looked really clean and nice with that energy stuff. And again, I thought it was a really cool story of having the daughter get back to her dad with the stars, right? Like that was the story of
that was cool.
Of her, her great grandmother, and having that, or sorry, just her grandmother, but having that story was fantastic, and I really enjoyed that. What did you think?
I think they're fine. It didn't really bother me. It bothered me at first, but I think it looks good. It probably looks better than if they tried to do like the stretchy powers thing, because that's almost never looked good in anything. Mm-hmm. And like it didn't really like she still, I think they definitely went out of their way to like, for the most part, she still uses those powers like she did in the comic, where she's making big fists and big hands and whatever. She also uses them to like walk or like get around and create energy shields and whatever. But like a lot of the times in the fights, she's punching people with a big fist. And in the final episode, she even does the embiggen thing, which is a big thing for the character in the comics, where she just makes herself big. And they still pulled that off. And I think, like, would I have liked to see the regular powers done well? Yeah. But this is fine too. It didn't really take away from anything. I think they did their best to keep it as close to the comic, like what she would use the powers for in the comics as she does in the show. Yeah. With this new version.
I hear you. I'm not gonna lie though, this show makes me really excited for the future of Marvel. The more like Marvel stuff that comes out, you can tell that they're like taking these characters that are younger and that are going to be essentially the next wave, right? No more Captain America, no more Iron Man, but
there is a Captain America,
and like even like Hawkeye, right? Like Hawkeye, or sorry, I mean there's still a Captain America, but I'm saying not Chris Evans Captain America. But basically they're bringing in different people to come in, and
the universe is moving fill those forward.
Spots. And I think that's really exciting, because I really do like pretty much all the characters that have come in, with the Hawkeye, and with Spider-Man taking over like Iron Man stuff, and with Anthony Mackie doing the Captain America, and with this Kamala Khan, I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think something I'm really appreciating about the MCU compared to the comics is it feels like characters can actually move forward in significant ways and then not be forced to backtrack like 10 years. Because that's the thing in the comic books. The characters always are forced to return to a status quo. Every time a new writer takes over or whatever, and they want to use a character that's been dead for 5 years, and now that character's brought back, and it's always a confusing jumble. That's not really being a thing in the MCU, because they're like, okay, well, Chris Evans has moved on. Now it's just going to be Anthony Mackie as Captain America, Yeah. Spider-Man, we might see him again. I don't know if Tom Holland has confirmed that he's going to do more, but he's still young enough that we could see him for years. They could even do like a Miles Morales after that if they wanted to. And I just like that the universe feels like it's moving forward. It's not stagnant, which is what happens a lot in the comics.
No, 100%. Somehow, though, Tom Hiddleston is still in the MCU. Doesn't matter how many times he dies. They will find a way to bring him back.
Yeah,
but no,
that's the thing. They could always they could bring back anyone they wanted to at any point, because that's what the comic books do. Just come up with some bull crap and bring them back. They're from an alternate dimension. They had a backup plan. It's a clone. Whatever. They could bring back anyone they wanted to. I don't think they should, but they could.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're supposed to be talking about Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
One of the things I also loved about this show is I think, and like it kind of teeters off towards the back half of the season, but it is one of the most visually interesting Marvel things we've seen, at least from Disney Plus. I think kind of just in general, but like with the way, what the specific scene I always mention when I'm talking about this is that scene where she's texting Bruno in like the first or second episode, where the text messages are in the environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That looks so cool. And like the scene where her and Bruno are going down the street and you see like the chalk paintings like on the wall in the background. Super cool. Like they did a lot of things really stylistically and cool in the show that I really like to see.
Mr. Wilson was talking to her too.
Yeah.
Like that scene. Mm-hmm.
And it does kind of suck because as this show keeps going, and I think it's because more dramatic stuff is happening and maybe it's harder to fit that kind of stuff in, You see that a lot less in the last 3 episodes than you do in the first 3, which was kind of a bummer because it's really cool, and then they kind of just stopped doing it. But like, I just
Yeah.
think doing more stuff like that would help Marvel feel a little bit more unique. And I think that's one of the things I also really liked about Multiverse of Madness is it was stylistic. Sam Raimi was styling all over that movie, and I think it helps it
Yeah.
stand out. Whether you like it or not, it helps it stand out from the rest of the MCU. So that's stuff I'd like to
Right.
see more of.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that was something that actually, I also thought about was that there was the stylish stuff at the beginning and not towards the end, because something that they talked about and established many times in the first couple episodes is, it feels like she's in a fantasy land. It feels like her head's in the clouds, all that type of stuff. And then that kind of just goes away. Like, she gets her powers, and then it's like, oh yeah, this is why my head's been in the clouds this whole time. Like, it wouldn't change that, right? Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't change that she still feels like.
I don't think there's
like
a narrative reason it stops. I think it was just like the story was too much was happening. They couldn't find like cool, like, because they tried in the last episode with like, and it was still cool that they did it at all. But in the last episode, they're doing like the chalk drawings, aligning with real life and whatever, and that was fun. But it wasn't as cool as some of the stuff we had seen before. So I think it was just
Right.
like they just too much was happening and they couldn't like fit it in, and maybe like it was a budget thing or whatever. I don't know. But like it had like an almost like Spider-Verse or Mitchell's versus the Machine vibe, where they're like mixing the cartoony and the like fantastic with like the actual stuff happening, and I love that art style. Spider-Verse is one of my all-time favorite movies. Mitchell's versus Machines is great, and like that kind of style I want to see in more stuff, and I definitely think it's had an influence, and I think this is one of the things it probably influenced. It also helps add to like the kind of, this is like, it reminds me a lot of Homecoming, this movie, because it's a teenage character in high school, and it feels authentic in a lot of ways. Like
No,
this
totally.
person's in high school. It's real high school. These are real high school kids. It was the same thing with Homecoming, and I think they nailed it here too. It's got that kind of vibe.
No, agreed. Well, here, let me ask you a question. So you let me know that you felt like the entire MCU is going to change because of something that happened towards the end. Let me know
Yes.
why do you think that's the case?
Okay, so it's a little controversial at this point. So that last scene where Bruno's like, "You didn't just get your powers because you're a clandestine." I'm gonna talk about that. Well, I guess I can talk about it now. In the comics, she's an Inhuman, right? And her powers are awakened when the leader of the Inhumans gasses the planet with whatever. It doesn't matter. Comic book stuff. Sorry. Here it's the bracelet, and she's a clandestine, which is a djinn, which I think is a really cool tie-in to the her heritage and everything. So I didn't mind that change either. But in that final scene with Bruno, it is implied, and I think it has since been confirmed, that Kamala is a mutant, like an X-Men
it's been confirmed. Yep.
mutant. She says that he says you have a mutation, and then I think they play like a bit of the '97 X-Men theme in the background, and that's kind of a big deal because she is the first confirmed mutant in the MCU, and a lot of people are kind of upset about it because she's not normally a mutant. She's not an X-Men. She's the cheap knockoff, which is the Inhumans. Inhuman fans are mad about it because they're not they're refusing to acknowledge the Inhumans anymore. One of the most famous
Thank
Inhumans
goodness.
isn't an Inhuman anymore, so they're mad about that. I don't care because the Inhumans are kind of nothing to me. I don't
Yes,
care about
yes.
them. But yeah, no. So what do you what are your thoughts on that review?
No, I thought it. I mean, I actually was super excited about it because it makes me really excited for just like Wolverine and like and different stuff like that. Because I think that their goal is to go to a lot of that and like getting Deadpool in the universe and like that type of stuff. So it made me very excited. But I thought it was really subtle in there, and I thought it was really good. Like it wasn't just point blank like you are this, but they did come out and confirm
You are an
that she is
X-Man.
mutant. So I think it was exciting, and I do kind of love how much they are just. You mentioned this, so I can't take credit, but you said this, and I loved it. It's almost like they're bashing on the Inhumans, with Black Bolt just getting obliterated, and then
Well, I feel
with
like
her now being a mutant. I think that's just so funny.
the whole Inhuman things is kind of fascinating because they were almost created as a replacement for mutants in the X-Men because Marvel didn't own the film rights to the X-Men. So like even in the comics they were kind of like built up to replace the X-Men at one point, and it's basic they're mutants. They're the same thing.
Yeah.
Like really in practice. And I think like Kevin Feige, I just don't think he wants to do Inhumans. He didn't want to do Inhumans in the first place. There was another producer, I can't remember who. He sucks though. He's a bad person. And he was the one who really was pushing for the Inhumans to be in the MCU. Kevin Feige never really wanted that, and that's why it ended up being a terrible TV show. And I just don't. I kind of get why Inhuman fans are upset, but also like better things is my advice. My problem with it here is I don't think it was necessary to make her a mutant.
Sure.
It doesn't really add anything, and I kind of hope I do think there's fully the chance that they just kind of ignore it going forward, you know, like, oh, we mentioned, like, yeah, she's a mutant, but it's not like she's not going to join the X-Men, she's not going to go to Professor X's school, she's going to be the same character, but instead of an Inhuman, it's not like, I mean, it kind of plays a big part, but it's not like being an Inhuman is a super big part of Miss Marvel. It's just the catalyst for her powers. I think I even read somewhere that she was originally supposed to be a mutant, and then like at some early phase of the character's development. So like I don't think that matters. My thing is just in this version of it, it's unnecessary because she has an explanation from her powers.
I disagree. I think there is going to be, and this is where I just see that Marvel's all about the future and they're all about their future stuff. I think there is going to be a storyline where it's going to be against mutants, and I think they are lining up of who's going to be on which side. It's kind of like their next civil war, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
where it's like heroes against heroes or whatever.
Well,
I think there's going to be something like that.
She needs to be a part of it. Because, like, my issue with it is that her being a mutant doesn't really serve a purpose in this version because she's an Inhuman in the comics, and that's how she gets her powers. That's how you justify her powers. In this show, you already had a justification for her powers with the fact that she's basically an interdimension alien. So you don't need the extra level of her being a mutant. Not really. I guess it's so they can be like, oh, why doesn't the rest of your family have powers or whatever? But like, wouldn't they also carry the mutant gene? Whatever, it doesn't matter. I think it's pointless. It's a little unnecessary. It's cool that we're getting X-Men. I'm really excited to see what the MCU does with X-Men. I just don't think Kamala needs to be a mutant. It doesn't matter.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I think it's for the future, man. I really do. I think it's going to be something against mutants, and then she's going to be on that side. She's going to be on the mutant side.
Yeah. Well, there is a Civil War 2 in the comics. That's Iron Man and Captain Marvel heading two teams. And if I remember correctly, Miss Marvel actually kind of ends up being on the opposite side as Captain Marvel. Like, she doesn't agree with her. And that would be something I'd like to see play out. Yeah, speaking of Captain Marvel, your most hated character ever, what did you think of the end credit scene? Did you see it?
I did see it. Yeah, that Brie Larson, that they like switched, Captain Marvel and
they definitely
Miss Marvel,
switched places,
switched
right?
spots. So, which is interesting. I'm not sure why. Do you have any context to that?
Well, they're hinting towards the Marvels, which is the next. It's Captain Marvel's 2 basically, but Monica Rambeau from WandaVision is going to be in it, and obviously Miss Marvel's going to be in it. We don't really know much about it besides those 3 characters being in it. This is honestly the first hint that we're getting anything about it. But yeah, I don't really. Obviously, we don't have an explanation now, but it's going to tie into that movie somehow. It's going to be the reason those 2 meet, which I'm actually excited to see because I want to see how that Kamala handles meeting her hero like that.
Right. It's going to be kind of fun.
Also, some people tried to say that like she morphed into Captain Marvel, which is a thing that happens in the comics, because in the comics she can change how she appears, but she can't do that here. So that's not what happened. Anyone who's saying that is wrong. They switch places.
Right, because you even see Captain Marvel look at like the poster of herself, and it's like,
Yeah,
like,
could you imagine
she has no idea
that?
where she is.
You're in space fighting like a monster or whatever, and then you get transported to a teenager's bedroom, and it's just all Captain Marvel stuff on the wall. You just get transported to a fangirl's room.
Be a little concerned.
Yeah,
I'll be a little concerned. Okay, well, perfect. Well, let me ask you, Justin. 0 out of 10. What would you rate Miss Marvel?
9 out of 10. It's probably, and like I'm gonna admit, it's because of the pre-existing bias I have for the character. Like I said, Miss Marvel is one of my favorite characters. It's my favorite Disney Plus Marvel show.
Whoa,
maybe my favorite Disney Plus show, because they just nailed the character so well, and it's one of my favorite characters. So I really liked it. I enjoyed every episode. I love her as the character. It all worked out so great.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not as bully on it, but I would give it an 8 out of 10. It's not my favorite Marvel TV show. I think I have at least a couple, honestly, above it, but I do think it was really good. I enjoyed watching it. I, again, binged it all in one night because it was fun. I think there was a couple things that were a little off with the villain, and that it could have been a movie, in my opinion.
I don't think it needed to be a movie. I think one of the reasons it shouldn't have been a movie is because Miss Marvel is kind of a smaller, down-to-earth character. And I think that's one of the reasons her being in a show worked better than a movie, because she doesn't need a movie. You know?
I mean, I hear that, but like, for example, when Iron Man first came out, no one was really like, oh my gosh, we need to have an Iron Man movie or anything like that, you know?
Well, yeah, but it's Iron Man.
Which is a good movie. Well, yeah, but I mean, Miss Marvel is Miss Marvel, you know? I mean, at this point, any MCU can come out with any movie, and
well, I know, but if they're gonna do, like, at some point, people are gonna get burned out if they just start pumping out movies, which they're already kind of doing. They're doing, what, 3 this year alone? Yeah, I think, like,
100%.
A movie would serve better for somebody like Thor or Doctor Strange than someone like Miss Marvel, who would probably, and she's gonna be in the next Captain Marvel movie, so she'll get her chance on the big screen. But I think for an introduction to the character, for a smaller scale story with smaller scale stakes, a TV show, like, it's not even like a real TV show. It's a Prime TV show or whatever. It's a bigger budget than you get on whatever. I don't know. I think it just works. It makes more sense for the character, in my opinion.
Sure. Agree to disagree there, but that's okay. But everyone, comment down below what you think, or thought of Miss Marvel. Give us what your 0 out of 10 rating would be, and let us know what else we should talk about here on the channel. We really enjoy talking about, you know, different movies, TV shows, and video games. So let us know if there's anything that you want us to make a video on, and anything else you want to add there, Justin.
No.
Nice. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you guys all next time.